It's the Blue Jays This Week vodcast edition. We're back at Rogers Center. Ben Ennis and Mike Wilner.
Here he is.
Beautiful
ballpark, this.
Yeah, it is. Well, compared to the Trop, maybe.
Yes. Yeah, the last place I was in with a roof on it was not nearly as beautiful.
What do you think of Fenway? Fenway's
nice.
Yeah.
There are rats.
Yeah.
But, it's nice because just the history, being on that field and knowing who else has been on that field.
Yeah, that's I think the
pretty
coolest part.
amazing.
It's kind of a dump, though, outside of the history,
It is
right?
kind of a dump.
Right? The rats.
It's one of like 2 stadia remaining in baseball that have obstructed view seats. You can wind up in the first deck behind a pole and not be able to see anything.
That's always a tough one.
But you know what? They've really updated a couple of big scoreboards in right center and in dead center, and they're like, they're video boards. They're huge, but they still have that kind of old-timey look to them, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
It's inside it's a dump, but it's an old ballpark.
What's it like in the press box? Is it dumpy up there, or is it refurbished?
The broadcast booth.
Okay,
so
sorry.
I didn't go in the press box much. I kind of wandered in a couple of times, but I don't think they like it. I don't think the writers like it very much. The broadcast booth is okay. It's cozy when there are 3 people doing a broadcast, but not as cozy as Tampa or Oakland. But it's fine. I couldn't see first base from where I was sitting, but I could see most of the field.
That's fine.
Yeah.
You just have to, okay, all right. Just assume or look at the monitor when there's a
what you do, right?
a tight play at first base. All right, let's talk about the road trip. 4-3.
Yep.
The Blue Jays finish on that 7-game road trip. Could have easily been 5-2.
Yeah. Could
5-2
have easily been 3-4.
I suppose.
Right.
But 4-3 is very good when you go on a road trip.
Any road trip.
And especially against. Well, I guess Tampa's going to be up there with the top teams.
Everybody's
in the
ahead of you in the standings now, right? So you can't really look at it that way. But any 4-3 road trip is a good road trip, no matter who you are, no matter where you're going, unless it's through like Houston and Miami. Yeah, then you'd be upset.
And a couple of huge comebacks. Jay Happ goes down, gets hit. Brutal line drive. Luckily, not as serious as it looked at all. Almost took his ear off, but. And you get 2 starts from Ramon Ortiz and Chad Jenkins' second start of the season at any level, and you still come away with a 4-3 road trip. Ortiz, they didn't get the win in that game because they were just against a dominant John Lester, but Chad Jenkins, people have to be excited about that.
They combined to give up 2 runs in 10 innings, Chad Jenkins and Ramon Ortiz, when Ricky Romero gives up 3 runs in a third of an inning in his start in Tampa, right? So you have to be thrilled with what the 2 of them provided. They're going to need Ortiz again a little sooner than they thought, which, who knows how well that's going to go. But they gave the Blue Jays exactly what they needed and what they hadn't gotten earlier in the year from Romero, from Dave Bush, from Ramon Ortiz even. So they've used 22 pitchers this year, which is disgusting. It's not even Victoria Day yet, and they've been waiting for someone to grab the bull by the horns, and Ortiz and Jenkins both did that. Jenkins did a little better, I think.
Somebody that knows a little bit about pitching is Pat Hentgen. He's a former Cy Young Award winner, and he's currently the bullpen coach with
knows about foot injuries, too.
Yeah, he knows. We didn't get into that at all, but you and him sharing some foot injuries that maybe we'll get into when we come back from that interview.
Maybe not.
But probably not. Here's our 4 leaders in the field segment with Blue Jays bullpen coach Pat Hentgen.
Ford Leaders in the Field. Presented by the 2013 Ford F-150, Canada's Player of the Year for 47 years running.
Joined by the Blue Jays bullpen coach and Pat Hentgen. And Pat, let's talk about the leadership role that some of the pitchers have taken on this team. We've seen R.A. Dickey, obviously, reigning National League Cy Young Award winner. Have you seen him kind of emerge as the leader of this staff?
I think R.A. definitely has taken on some of that leadership role with the year that he had last year, his age, his experience. He's been a traditional pitcher's transitioned to a knuckleballer. So for me, in the dugout, I think that's where you're looking at. Also Burley. I think Burley's a guy who's been steady Eddie for 12, 13 years. I think between the 2 of them, they've done a nice job.
Leaders kind of have to emerge, though, right? You can't walk into a locker room and say, okay, you know what, I'm here now, everything's all right, and I'm going to run this show. How does a guy who hasn't been around kind of make that happen?
That's a good question. I think that it comes with experience. I think definitely through spring training you get to know each other, and it's not that easy for an everyday player to listen to a pitcher. They're looking at us as pitchers going, well, you play every 5th day, So I think it's actually a co-leadership that needs to take place. One guy for the position players and one guy for the pitching staff.
I think from your perspective, when you were just coming up in the game, I would think Jack Morris does that in 1992 when he walks in. You're a rookie, but you've been to a couple of spring trainings already. But is it immediately, as soon as a guy like him walked in a room, people said, hold on a sec, this is somebody?
Yeah, coming off the big World Series game that he pitched the year before, there's no doubt we all have a lot of respect for him when he walks in the locker room. Also Dave Winfield, also Dave Stieb, who had been here and holds all the records to this day. So for me, as a young guy breaking in at that time, pretty fortunate to look back and see Hanky, Ward, Stieb and Morris and Dave Stewart the year after. So I was lucky on my part for sure.
I'm sure at some point in your career you turned into a leader. You felt like you had a leadership role, winning a Cy Young award as well. Was there an off season or a year where you kind of realized, this is time for me to step to the forefront and be one of the leaders of the staff?
I think actually 97, 96, I came back in 96, and 95 was actually a rough year for me, so I remember going into spring training thing, get back to the basics, and let's, get ahead and get out of the middle and blah, blah, blah. So for me, the leadership part took place the next year. I think when we got Carpenter and Halladay as young guys, I remember doing my stuff in my locker, and I'd look over and they'd be staring at me. So I knew, looking back, that these guys were doing exactly what I did to Jack Morris and Dave Stieb.
And what about when you go to St. Louis and Baltimore? Did you try to assert yourself there with some of the younger guys?
Especially in Baltimore, it was pretty much automatic when I walked in. Mussina had left. He went to the Yankees. I moved in. Hargrove called me in, told me I was going to start opening day, and at that point I knew that that was going to be part of my role, not only to pitch every fifth day, but to help some of the younger pitchers. At that time we had Erickson, but he was hurt, so B.J. Ryan was a young guy, following everybody around, and we had Buddy Groom in the bullpen, we had myself in the rotation. So when I look back on it, it's something that you take pride in it.
Getting back to this team, now Chad Jenkins comes up, makes his first start of the season, a great start, gets through the 5 innings. We know he was on a bit of a pitch count, but did a great job filling in as a part of the rotation. A younger guy like him, do you see him looking up and trying to get some tips from guys like we mentioned, like R.A. Dickey, like Mark Burley? Is he really just, going back to yourself, is he just absorbing the information he can get while he's here?
Well, if he's smart, he would, because when I look back at Carpenter and Halladay, they were young, looking at me, staring at me and Clemens, and watching our routine. So if Jenkins was smart, I think he'd do the same thing. I mean, Burley's got 405 consecutive starts. If you don't watch that guy, shame on you. That's the way I look at that. Jenkins is a guy that gets people out with his fastball in the strike zone, and it's an important thing to be able to do that here in this league at this level.
Before we let you go, and thanks for all this time, what sort of a difference? I mean, it's something that you can't put a finger on, leadership and what it means. When there's a team that wins, everyone's going to talk about how they're great chemistry and they have great leadership. When a team is crap, they have no chemistry, even if it's the same people around. What is it about that sort of chemistry and leadership that has an effect on a team?
I think it's an unselfishness among the players, not only the pitchers, but the position players too. And the good teams play together, and the good teams pick each other up, and the good teams have leaders that do that all the time. Mahler was that way. He may not have been the most verbal guy when I broke in, but he led by example, the way he played the game and the way he played the game right. So I think it comes down to unselfishness, and I think that's probably the most important thing.
There is Pat Hentgen. What a nice guy.
He's honestly, legitimately the best. And when he was before he was a coach here, he used to come and hang out every once in a while, and he always told me listen to the Blue Jays talk. So that's awesome. We love the Pat Hentgen for
even
that,
if he
for
was
no
lying,
other reason.
Even if he was lying, that's a nice thing to say.
Nice,
and you guys,
nice.
you share foot ailments. We won't get into it too much, but you stepped on a shish kebab skewer, and he told us a disgusting story before we
involving
went
a funnel,
on.
And
he jumped on a funnel, and a big chunk of his foot was missing, and he was laid up for, what did he say, like 6 weeks?
6 weeks in bed, yeah.
Anyways.
I'm at work the next day. I just have to say that. I have to say.
Yeah.
At work the next day.
Wearing some ridiculous footwear, but yes, you are here. Good for you. All right, so we're here. The Blue Jays did return home. They got this weird 2-game series thing.
2-game homestand with an off day on either side. That's the strangest thing
I've ever seen. They haven't had a lot of off days this season.
They really haven't.
I feel like they maybe have the fewest off days of anybody in baseball at this point.
It may be. I think they've had 4. Yeah. I think they've had 4. And
do you think it's good for this team at this point? Because they did play so well on the road.
Such a long time where you were so desperate for an off day.
Yes. And now it comes, you win 4
they're playing well. They won 5 out of 8. So I don't know. There's never a bad time, I don't think, for a day off. But it is weird to come home for 2 and then go on the road for 3 and then come back home for 9. It's a strange setup to the schedule.
We talked about this a little bit on the audio podcast, which you can find on sportsnet590.ca. Also, we tweet out the links to all our stuff. But the Blue Jays pitching staff and the depth has been tested already this season when you thought it was going to be their strong point with all the moves in the offseason. But you got Ramon Ortiz and Chad Jenkins already pitching on that road trip. We mentioned in the podcast before we knew about Brandon Morrow, but he was supposed to start on Wednesday. That's been pushed back, and we're not exactly sure what the deal is with him.
He says he's going to be able to pitch on Saturday, but again, he said he was going to be able to pitch on Wednesday. He said he was going to be able to pitch last Sunday. So I think they really they know that him starting is better than anybody else they've got. So they don't want to DL him and not have him for Saturday's start against the Yankees in New York, even though it'll be 12 days between starts or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But the back is a funny thing, and anyone who has had a bad back knows.
3 Blue Jays with bad backs this year. R.A. Dickey, Jose Bautista, and now Brandon Morrow. They
but
gotta
all in
get
different places. Dickey's is up here, Bautista's down there. I'm not sure where Morrow's is.
Yeah.
Adam Lynn's had back issues. Yeah, the sleep number bed might help for sure. Maybe the Craftmatic adjustable action.
Yeah.
I don't know. You'd think they could afford that.
But it is weird. They got great starts out of, great is a bit of an overstatement, I think, in Ramon Ortiz.
1 run is what, it wasn't
did walk
pretty.
more than
he walked 5,
would have liked.
1 run in 5 innings. Great.
Chad Jenkins was outstanding. We talked a little bit about Chad with Pat Hentgen in that interview there, but I mean, not the pitches. He was on a pitch count, obviously, right? So he only did get through 5, but only walked 1. Was around the zone. This team just needs to save the bullpen a couple of innings, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, it is a really hard-worked bullpen, and now there are 9 guys in it though. So I mean, they've got room. And when you look at the individual number of innings pitched, nobody's really been overburdened. So that's a good thing. And you have to imagine that the deeper we get into the season, the more the starting pitchers are going to be able to go 6 innings with regularity, 7 maybe. Dickey went 8 last time out, and I expect the same thing from him against the Giants. I don't know what they're going to get from Ortiz. I mean, you got to be thrilled if you get another 5 from Ortiz, but you've got a day off after, so you should be okay.
Yeah, it's definitely a different-looking Blue Jays team than we thought was going to look like before the season started. I didn't think Ramon Ortiz was going to factor into May for the Blue Jays. I got to be honest with you.
No.
Anyways, he's Mike Wilner. You can follow him on Twitter at Wilnerness590. I'm Ben Ennis. You can follow me on Twitter at BenNessSnet. You can follow the podcast as well at Jays This Week. Audio, video, and hologram. We're still working on hologram.
Yeah, we're working on the hologram.
Anyways, we'll see you next week.
In your living rooms next week.